It's a Wednesday morning, and we're rolling along with the NFC West as we make our way to the halfway point. Day 14 of 32 in our NFL team previews. I'm Jim Derry, and this is Bet.NOLA.com, powered by the Datitude Podcast as we move along here. And we're up to the Super Bowl champions, the defending Super Bowl champions, 6 months since they won the Super Bowl. Hard to believe, isn't it? Well, this team comes back, and there's no reason to think they're at least not going to be a contender, right? I mean, you look at Sean McVay and what he's been able to do with this team, and they've been good ever since he's gotten there. What makes me a little bit nervous about McVay and about this team is it bothered me a little bit. There was a little talk of retirement, and it wasn't just talk. I mean, you could see that he's actually pondering this. How much longer does he want to coach? He's a young guy. Is he a guy that maybe goes off, spends time with his family? Maybe he pulls the Sean Payton route where he goes on TV for a little while, the John Gruden route, eventually comes back to coaching. Easily could see that happening. But in the meantime, this Rams team coming off a Super Bowl victory, we all know how hard it is to win back-to-back Super Bowls. It's only been done a handful of times. Is this one of those teams? I'm not really sure that's where they are. We're going to get to their numbers and their value in just a minute, but we'll talk about their over-under total of 10.5 and how high that is. And you got to pay juice either way. If you like the over or the under with this Rams team, you got to pay juice. $115 to win 100 on the over, $105 to win 100 on the under. There's not a lot of value in the division title. There's no value in their conference title. And really, even though their Super Bowl number, surprisingly, at plus 1,200, I thought it'd be about 1,000. I still don't know if there's value there as well. I think you can see where we're going with this team. But you talk about the personnel and Matt Stafford and what a difference he made for this team. Such a huge improvement over Jared Goff. There's no question that was the case. You look at this receiving core, and honestly, they have one of the best receiving cores in the NFL. And bringing over Allen Robinson is going to make a big difference. And I mean, I can't even believe that I talked about who they brought over before we talk about who really probably should have been the MVP in the National Football League last year. Cooper Kupp. He ended up winning in the Super Bowl when he probably shouldn't. His teammate, Aaron Donald, should have got that. We'll get to him in just a minute. But Cooper Kupp can he repeat what he did last year? That is going to be really hard to do. I mean, those numbers were ridiculous. If you had him in fantasy football, he might have led you to a championship. There's a good chance that he did. He certainly helped lead the Rams to a championship because he can do it all. And then there's Van Jefferson and the question of whether Odell Beckham will re-sign with his team and when he'll be ready to play. Might not be ready until mid to late October. Kind of depends on where he is with his injuries. You look at the defensive side of the football, the Rams, even though they ranked 17th last year, I mean, who really wants to go up against Aaron Donald? Even though he turns 31, he turned 31 before the season started, before it starts. We haven't started it yet. He's still a dominant defensive lineman and maybe one of the best defensive ends ever to play this game. I mean, that's where he is. There's no question. He should have been the Super Bowl MVP. The things he did in that Super Bowl helped lead the Rams there. Jalen Ramsey leads a pretty good secondary. And they're solid just about everywhere. They lose Von Miller, but this team's good. Look, they have the toughest schedule in the NFL according to the records from last season. I'm not so sure it's the toughest schedule in the NFL, but it is pretty tough nonetheless. The good news for the Rams, in my opinion, is there are no super tough stretches in this schedule. There are tough teams, obviously, right off the bat, playing the Buffalo Bills, who are the favorites to win Super Bowl 57 this year. But if you look at the rest of them, you go through Atlanta, that should be a win. At Arizona, good chance that's a win. And then they play at San Francisco, which is going to tell you a whole lot about this division. And then they get Dallas and Carolina before a bye week. So there are certainly spots in this schedule that are tough, but there are also spots to be had. A little later on in the schedule, you get to December 4th, Seattle, Las Vegas, at Green Bay, Denver, at the Chargers, and at Seattle. I don't like the fact that they finished with 2 road games. Look, Overall, when you talk about this team, 10.5 wins is a lot when you're talking about over-unders. Anything double digits, it's hard to say. If I had to make a pick, I would take the over, but this is not a team I'm going to bet in any way. Certainly not like last year when I had the Rams. They were my only future to win the Super Bowl in the preseason. They paid off. Not touching them this year. But I want to hear from my expert. He may have a different opinion. This Wednesday morning, we are ready to look at the defending Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams here with Adam Chernoff of Covers.com to give a little analysis on the pick that I've made this morning.
All right.
And, when you look at the Rams, it's hard to believe, first of all, that it's been 6 months since the Super Bowl. I mean, that's where we are right now. I mean, this has been a really quick offseason. But here's the one thing when you look at the Rams to me, Adam, I think they were the only futures Super Bowl bet I made last year, but in preseason. I made a couple other small ones during the season. One happened to be Cincinnati, which I got lucky with. But that being said, I don't think, I hate to be indifferent 2 days in a row, but this is a strange number for me at 10.5 because I have a gut feeling that they're going to regress a little bit. But they're still a really good team. But you look at their offensive rank from last year, 9th, defensive rank, 17th. I guess overall, if I had to play it, I'd play them over just because I think they are pretty darn good. But at some point, Aaron Donald's going to start to slide. He's into his 30s now. Sean McVay, I'm not sure if his heart is in it. He was talking about retiring just a couple months ago. I'm kind of indifferent on this team, and I don't think you can bet any of the numbers, division title, conference, or Super Bowl. No value there.
Well, I'll push back with the Aaron Donald thing. He looks pretty frightening at practice, as always, so far through the first few days of training camp. So I think he's okay. I think this roster's okay, too. This is probably overall a top 5 roster in the NFL, arguably the best front 7. You can make a case they have the best wide receiver group with the addition of Allen Robinson. That's going to be very difficult on opposing secondaries. I guess where my sort of concerns ultimately come is that offense really struggled in the red zone, oddly enough, last year. And so you usually look at that and assume that there's room for improvement or regressions ultimately coming, which would obviously bode well for LA. But the offensive line lost a couple of key pieces in the offseason. Whitworth to retirement. Corbett left as well. So there's some changes up front for guys who are really key in sort of holding that pocket and that offense together. So McVay, we know, likes to run a lot. Their play calling last season, anytime that they got a lead, it got really, really tight and really, really conservative. And so if the offensive line takes a step back, you might see some odd things. For me, my issue here, you see that double-digit win total. Very rarely will I look to go over a double-digit win total. The win rate is just very low on those numbers. The market prices them well. So obviously priced extremely high because of the Super Bowl win. But another team that I'll stay on the sidelines with, I think books are handling well. But still, very, very good roster here all around.
What do you hear from the Sharp world as far as the Rams go? We kind of talked off air about the Cardinals and just not a lot of action one way or the other on the Cardinals. What do you hear Sharp-wise on the Rams?
Same thing, not a lot. I think it's probably a team that's going to get a lot more attention week to week than they will in the futures market, just because of how this team sets up. I think it's a really high variance team. Like you can see this team playing to a lot of different ranges of outcomes against certain opponents. So this can be a very, very high scoring team when it's needed, but it could also be a team that sits on that defense and can really suffocate opponents too. And so, price-wise, it'll be interesting week to week, but it's similar to Arizona. There's just, I was saying, not a lot of opinions, not a lot of stances taken from some of the most respected bettors. It's a very neutral team, but that's just because of the really high price point.
And you look, and they have the toughest schedule in the NFL, or if you go by last year's record. So I don't think it's the toughest schedule when I look at it, but it's still pretty darn tough. And we'll see how the Rams navigate through that as we go along. I have a feeling we're going to have a little bit of opinion on tomorrow's team. Our Thursday team is the San Francisco 49ers. At least I have an opinion. We'll find out if you do too when we talk tomorrow.
I will as well.